everyone. Are you ready to dive into some seriously strange stuff?
I am. I'm ready to go.
All right. Today, we're going to be talking about UFO abductions and trying to figure out, what's really going on. We're going to be looking at a paper from 1996. It's
Oh,
called
no, 1996?
Toward an Explanation of the UFO Abduction Phenomenon.
Okay,
And it's pretty fascinating stuff.
I bet.
So are these stories like actual alien encounters?
Right.
Or could it be something else entirely?
Yeah, it's amazing how many people believe that they've been abducted.
Right.
Like millions of Americans think that they've been taken by aliens, and it's incredible.
So like imagine a typical abduction.
Or,
Forget like the cheesy,
yeah, the beam me up kind of stuff.
Yeah, beamed up. We're talking about people floating through walls,
Right.
having weird medical procedures, feeling totally out of control.
Like, how's that even possible?
I know, right? Like, picture yourself floating through a wall.
Floating through a wall.
It's like, whoa, how does that even work?
Yeah, and the thing is, like, so many people tell similar stories.
Right.
It's so strange.
Like, are they making this up?
Yeah, that's the first thing you think of, right?
Yeah, totally. Like, are they just attention seekers?
Right. But actually, the paper makes a good point. Most of these people, they don't want to be famous.
Really?
They're not out there, seeking the spotlight.
Interesting.
They often want to stay anonymous, in fact.
Huh. So, if it's not for attention, then why?
Right. Why?
Why are they telling these stories?
Well, the paper gets into some pretty interesting psychology here.
Okay.
And one of the big things it talks about is hypnosis.
Okay, hypnosis.
Yeah, because hypnosis is weird, right? It's like, doesn't make you lie,
Right.
but it can make you, like, super sure about things that maybe didn't even happen.
So they're like creating these false memories
Yeah, exactly.
that feel totally real.
Totally real, yeah.
Oh, that's kind of creepy.
It is a little creepy.
But how does that connect to UFO abductions?
Well, researchers have found that a lot of these abductees remember things that are, like, suspiciously similar to stuff from science fiction.
Oh, wow.
Like obscure sci-fi. So it makes you think maybe their memories are being influenced by, like, books and movies.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, and then you add in the hypnosis, and it's like,
Wow.
who knows what's real anymore?
So they're not, like, intentionally lying?
No, not at all.
But the hypnosis could be making those memories feel super convincing.
Yeah, totally.
Huh. This is wild.
It is.
Now, the paper also talks about something called fantasy proneness.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
So what is that?
So basically, fantasy proneness is like a personality trait
Okay.
where some people have, like, crazy imaginations.
Right.
And they have a hard time separating fantasy from reality.
Like they live in their own little world.
A little bit, yeah. And guess what? They found that people who report abductions often score high on fantasy proneness.
No way.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
So it's like their brains are already wired to kind of blur the lines between what's real and what's made up.
Exactly.
Okay, buckle up. This is where things get a little weird.
I'm ready.
The paper actually compares UFO abductions to, wait for it,
Okay.
sexual masochism.
Whoa. That's a connection I wasn't expecting.
I know, right?
Right?
It sounds crazy, but stick with me here.
Okay.
So they're saying that both of these experiences, they have this common thread,
Okay.
which is
What is it?
the desire to escape from yourself.
Escape from yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
I can see where they're going with that.
Right.
Yeah.
So think about it. Modern life, it's like go, go, go.
All the time, yeah.
We're always under pressure
Yeah.
to perform, to be perfect, keep up a certain image.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting. And maybe for some people,
Yeah.
that desire to escape from all that pressure,
Right.
it gets so strong
Yeah.
that they create these scenarios where they can just let go of control.
Interesting. So you're giving up control to something else.
Exactly.
Whether it's, an alien or a dominant partner.
Yeah. It's like surrendering to a higher power.
But why would anyone want to do that?
I know, right?
It seems kind of counterintuitive.
It does.
Like, why give up control?
Right.
But maybe that's part of the appeal.
Yeah, maybe it's like...
Like, you're so overwhelmed with all the pressure of life that just letting go, even if it means pain or humiliation, it's a relief.
It's like a break from being you.
A break from being you.
Yeah.
A good way to put it.
And the paper goes into detail about these parallels.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like...
What kind of detail?
They talk about how both abductees and people into masochism,
Right.
they often describe feelings of pain,
okay,
restraint, even humiliation.
Interesting. I never thought I'd see UFO abduction and masochism in the same sentence.
Right.
But, when you explain it like that, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and here's the really wild part.
Okay, what?
They both often say they feel grateful to their tormentors.
Grateful.
Yeah, grateful.
That's wild.
I know, that one really threw me for a loop.
Like, why would you be grateful to someone who's causing you pain?
Right. But maybe it speaks to how powerful that need to escape really is.
That's deep, man.
Right. It's like, even in these situations that seem traumatic, there's a sense of relief.
Wow.
Like, thanks for taking over.
Yeah, thanks for taking the wheel.
I needed a break.
It's a lot to be you all the time.
It really is. But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, we need to remember that this paper doesn't just focus on psychology.
That's right.
It also looks at culture, memory, and even, like, maybe there are some neurological factors at play.
Okay, so it's not all in our heads.
Well, maybe some of it is.
Yeah.
But there might be more to it than that.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Let's keep going.
Let's do it.
So one thing that really stood out to me in this paper is that most of these UFO abduction reports, they come from the West.
Really?
Yeah, like countries with Western culture and values.
So what, aliens only like the West? What's going on there?
Well, the paper suggests it might not be about aliens at all, but more about the culture.
Okay.
Like in Western societies, there's all this pressure to be this strong, independent individual.
Right, like the self-made person.
Exactly. And that could be a lot of pressure.
It is. It's like constant pressure to succeed and be perfect.
Yeah. And maybe for some people, that makes the idea of escaping from all that, like, really appealing.
So they create these abduction stories as a way to escape from themselves.
Exactly. It's like a way to step outside of all that pressure, even if it's through a bizarre experience.
It's wild. So we've talked a lot about hypnosis.
Yeah.
But can these memories come up without it?
Oh, that's a good question.
Like, could someone just have an experience that feels like an abduction?
Right.
Even if they've never been hypnotized?
Yeah, totally. The paper talks about that.
Okay.
It says that this imaginative role-playing, it can happen even without a formal hypnotic induction.
So it's like you can get so caught up in your imagination that you create these really vivid memories that feel totally real.
Absolutely.
Whoa, that's kind of freaky.
It is, right? It shows how easy it is to mess with our memories.
Right, and especially when there are strong emotions involved, I guess.
Totally. And don't forget about the power of suggestion.
Ooh, yeah, good point.
Like a therapist or a friend could say something, or even like a news report you see.
Right.
And that could plant a seed of doubt.
And then suddenly you're looking at your own experiences in a whole new way.
Exactly. And if you're already into UFOs, that new way might lead you straight to abduction.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It is. But the paper also explores, like, are some people just more prone to this stuff?
Oh, interesting. So, like, is there a certain type of person who's more likely to have these experiences?
Well, they look into this thing called temporal lobe lability.
Temporal lobe lability. Yeah. Okay, now we're getting technical.
A little bit. Basically, it means there's too much electrical activity happening in the temporal lobes of the brain.
And remind me, the temporal lobe is involved in?
Memory and sensory perception, that kind of stuff.
Right, right. So if there's too much activity there.
Yes, studies have shown that people with temporal lobe lability, they often have all these unusual experiences.
Like what?
Like hallucinations, mystical experiences, even feeling a presence nearby.
Wow, that sounds like an abduction checklist.
Right. So maybe some people, they're just more sensitive to these kinds of things.
So it's not that they're making it up. It's that their brains are just wired differently.
Exactly. They're picking up on things that most people don't.
Huh. That's fascinating. But I've always wondered, why do some people, even when everyone's skeptical, they just like double down on their beliefs?
That's a good question.
Like, wouldn't the lack of evidence make them reconsider?
Well, that's where this idea of cognitive dissonance comes in.
Cognitive dissonance. That rings a bell. Remind me what that is again.
Yeah. So imagine you believe with all your heart that you've been abducted.
Okay.
But then you can't find any proof.
Right.
That creates a huge conflict in your mind.
It's like your brain is saying, wait a minute, something's not adding up.
Exactly. And that's cognitive dissonance.
So how do people deal with that?
One way is to just focus on the stuff that confirms their beliefs.
Oh, so they just ignore anything that doesn't fit.
Pretty much. It's like creating an echo chamber.
Right, where they only hear what they want to hear.
Exactly. And it makes sense, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
If your whole world has been turned upside down,
Uh-huh.
you want to hold on to something familiar.
Right. It's like those beliefs give them a sense of stability.
And social support can really reinforce those beliefs too.
Yeah, like those UFO abduction support groups.
Exactly. People come together, they share their stories,
Mm-hmm.
they validate each other's
And
experiences.
suddenly they feel like they're not alone.
Right. And there's safety in numbers, especially when you believe in something unconventional.
It's interesting how that works. The more a belief is challenged, the harder people seem to cling to it.
Yeah, and there's actually some classic social psychology research that supports that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Festinger did this study on a group called the Seekers.
Okay.
They believed that a huge flood was going to destroy the world.
Oh, wow.
And even when the day came and went, and obviously there was no flood,
Yeah.
they still believed it.
Wow, they didn't give up.
No, they doubled down. They started trying to convert other people.
It's like the more their belief was challenged, the more they needed to prove it was right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it makes you think, how much of this is about being right, even if it means, like, bending reality?
It's a good question. Speaking of bending reality, the paper also mentions the Men in Black phenomenon.
Oh, yeah, the Men in Black.
It sounds like something out of the X-Files.
It does, right?
Like these mysterious guys who silence witnesses to UFO stuff.
Yeah, but in this paper, they're seen as another way to deal with that cognitive dissonance we were talking about.
So instead of questioning their beliefs,
Right.
people just turn any skepticism into proof of a cover-up.
Exactly. It's like, see, they're trying to silence me. That means I must be right.
Wow. It's amazing how much psychology is woven into all of this.
It is. It makes you think about what we even consider real.
Right, and how our brains work to make sense of everything.
Yeah. We're constantly trying to create a narrative that makes sense.
Even if that narrative gets pretty wild sometimes.
Totally. And that's one of the big takeaways from all this.
What is it?
It's not just about UFOs or aliens or spaceships.
Okay.
It's about understanding ourselves,
Right.
our minds, our motivations, and how we try to make sense of the world, especially when it feels confusing.
We need a story to help us understand it all.
We do. And sometimes that story involves extraordinary things.
It's a good reminder that everyone's reality is different.
Absolutely. It's shaped by our experiences, our beliefs, our culture.
And there's no one right answer when it comes to these phenomena.
No. And that's a pretty powerful thing to realize. It can help us understand not just UFO abductions, but also, like, everyday life.
So true. So we've been talking about these abduction experiences in, like, a general way.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of curious, does the paper talk about any differences between what men and women report?
Oh, yeah, that's a great point. It does, actually.
Okay, cool.
It mentions that, just like in traditional sexual masochism, there are some distinct patterns in the abductee stories.
Oh, wow. So, like, what do the male aliens make their victims do the dishes?
Not exactly.
Okay.
But it's interesting, though. The paper compares the abductions to those gendered scripts you find in masochistic fantasy.
I see. Okay, so give me an example. What kind of stuff are we talking about?
Well, it says that men are more likely to report scenarios involving oral humiliation.
Oral humiliation. Okay, now you got to elaborate.
So think like having unpleasant substances smeared on their mouth.
Oh, yeah.
Or being forced to swallow something weird, or having objects put in their mouth, that kind of thing.
Oh, gosh. No, thank you. But I guess it fits with that whole powerlessness theme.
Right, exactly. Forced submission, basically.
Okay, that's pretty intense. What about the women? What do they usually say happened?
The paper says women tend to describe being displayed and examined, often while lying on a table.
Oh, so it's like that classic image of being, like, objectified and controlled.
Exactly. It really aligns with some common masochistic fantasies.
Wow. So it's not just the physical stuff that matters, it's the whole power dynamic.
Right, right. And I think these parallels between the abductions and the fantasies, especially these gendered aspects, they really point to a motivational element.
Like these stories aren't just random, they're serving a purpose.
Yeah, like maybe they're fulfilling a need for escape or surrender, or even a way to just take a break from being self-aware for a while.
It's like they're giving us a peek into the subconscious.
Totally. And that's what makes it so fascinating, right? It's not just aliens and spaceships. It's about understanding ourselves and our own desires, even the ones we don't realize we have.
So after all this, where do we land? Are UFO abductions real?
Well, based on this paper, it seems like the answer is way more complicated than just yes or no.
Yeah, I'm seeing that.
It's a mix of psychology, memory, culture, maybe even neurology. It's wild.
It's a lot to unpack, and that's what makes this stuff so fascinating, right?
Exactly. It challenges our assumptions and makes us think about the world in a whole new way.
Well said. So, to our listeners, if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity,
Yes.
definitely check out the full paper
Yeah.
and do some exploring on your own. Don't be afraid to ask questions and keep an open mind.
That's the key. There's so much out there to discover, and sometimes the journey is just as important as the destination.
I love that. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride.
It's been fun.
And until next time, keep those minds open and curious.